Did I ever tell you about that time I was invited for a master's tea? It starts last May. I was sitting with a friend by Singapore's Old Airport Road.
Would you mind if I brought my parents along?
Sure. We catch up. She's the one I had shared just 15 minutes together with 3 years before, my flight landing into Singapore shortly before hers was taking off. I ran from my gate to hers for a very, very short reunion. Now, though, we eat noodles and Western chicken chop drenched in too much black pepper sauce, her big family in tow.
You draw a lot of people's pictures across the world, right?
My friend's dad asks.
You probably have a lot of stories to tell.
I can think of a few.
We have this thing at my university, we call it a master's tea. It's pretty laid back. Would you be interested if I invited you sometime?
Fast forward 4 months. My flight lands. I take a cab into my friend's dad's dorm at National University Singapore's College of Alice and Peter Tan. There's someone waiting to pick me up. He beeps me into the building, giving me a short tour. Then he takes me up the elevator to my door where I'll be staying. It has my name on it. It has my name on it. We grab a coffee across campus.
Kopi sutai, 谢谢.
He orders. Whoa, that's Malay, Hokkien, and Mandarin. So many languages mixed together in a single sentence for a single cup of coffee. But this is Singapore. The locals don't even think about it. Still, I'm here for more than coffee. Dr. Tan, my friend's dad, invited me for a master's tea, yes, but also to help with some student onboarding. My first task? Help with an inequality walk. A few dozen students pile into a bus. I take a seat at the back, pop out my pens, and start to draw, getting a feel for the students before our event even begins. My first 2 subjects study engineering, though we talk about physics, about education, about mathematics. And by the time the bus pulls us into the fanciest waterfront properties in Singapore, and we all make our way out, my conversation with the students is still ongoing. Why is math taught that way? Why are STEM students expected to hate the humanities? These questions get them thinking, inspired even, but I have to cut it short. I have a job to do.
Now, where are our adult facilitators?
Dr. Tan asks the crowd gathered at his feet. He introduces us one by one, then assigns us a group of students to guide on the inequality walk. A few kilometers starting from the wealthiest neighborhood on the island nation, apartments with assigned places to park their yachts, finishing at the poorest neighborhood in the tiny country. How does inequality show up? He wants us to take note, in little things around us on the way. But I'm not a student here. I'm not on the walk. I'm a facilitator. I think back to my time growing up. The way my dad would question me, challenging me to learn more than simply teaching me what he knew, forcing me to think with questions instead of just instructing. Now, I'm the mentor, facilitating learning, though maybe I'm still learning myself.
We all know that the races here are supposed to be equal.
Dr. Tan addresses us at the end of our walk.
We just went by a church, a mosque, and a temple. Do you know the average land prices for each here differs? Which is the most expensive? Why?
Dr. Tan, too, focuses on asking, this is how you learn. This is what I'm here for, too. That night, we eat at a hawker center here in the worst neighborhood in Singapore.
I used to come to rural areas like this all the time.
One of the students tells me.
My grandma used to live here.
But this is not rural. I laugh out loud. I tell her of my visits to Alaska, to the Mojave Desert, to Bavarian farmland, to tiny islands in Japan. And looking at this neighborhood and this girl, I understand why my friend's dad invited me to share some perspective. We pile into another bus. We wait at a dock, then pile onto a boat. Pulau Hantu, or Haunted Island in Malay, is our next orientation activity. Dr. Tan has a few more adult facilitators invited, too. An entomologist and a marine biologist to tell us about the local life here changing because of the rising water lines. Half of the haunted island mysteriously disappears twice a day. High tide. With an island this low, more and more of the land disappears like a ghost these days. We cook with what's there, making fire, shooing away the local monkeys, students sometimes getting lost in their own discussions. Though we all gather around in time for an instruction on bugs from James, the entomologist. He shows off a stag beetle he caught, placing it in students' hands. He tears open a plastic bag, shaking a few woodworms into his palm, offering them to us.
Now these you can eat. They're popular in Thailand.
My stay includes credits for the NUS dining app. Free meals. I take a few things for breakfast, hoping the stiff food tastes better than it looks. It is much worse. But I love the time it gives to draw more students. I love how easy it is to get these students thinking, to get them asking questions about the world.
So actually, what do you study?
Some eventually ask.
Oh, so you're not a student here? Then are you a professor?
I laugh. I'm just a friend of Dr. Tan's, I say.
Wait, are you the one giving the master's tea? I saw your posters around.
It's on Monday at 17, I say. Come if you can. Then finally it's time for the master's tea. There's cake lollipops and snacks, and, of course, tea. Of course, I bring my pens, too. Already I draw, because I start today at portrait 12997. I'd like to reach my 13,000th portrait, right here. I take a seat, face a student. I draw one, another, and the questions slowly quiet as the master's tea begins. It's a conversation, so Dr. Tan fields questions from the small audience. They ask how many I've drawn and why I keep going, about the far-flung places I've drawn them, what the many, many gifts I've gotten from the interactions have been.
How do you think using both sides of your brain impacts your work?
How do you balance your career in IT with art?
Tell us about your book project.
And then it's done. It's over. A few dozen of us in a little room, curious about a little window to another perspective in the world. Mine. The president of the college swings by to shake hands. We pose, so many happy with their portraits. One of them, holding number 13,000. Portraits, it only took my two hands a few minutes to draw. But there's still one more night.
Hey, can I still get my picture?
Someone asks on my Instagram.
Are you still at CAPT?
It's my last night, and I rush back from an evening with friends. Just because my scheduled activities are over doesn't mean my visit is. Which floor are you at? I write her back. I come up and get a taste of Australian and New Zealand Army Corps biscuits, or Anzac cookies. There's a ton of students piled into the kitchen, taking tries of the sweets this student prepared. I draw a few of them.
Wait, you're the one with the master's tea, isn't it?
We get upstairs to have a bit more room and more air. A few rush off ahead to get me a chair, to get a chair for the students who sit and get drawn.
Where was your favorite place you visited?
They ask.
What do you think was the biggest thing you've learned through drawing people?
Oh, you speak German? This one over here is from Germany.
We break into German then, as I draw his picture. It's fun to bob and weave from one language to another, but drawing portraits is so much more than just the art of it. It's a performing art. So to not exclude the rest of the students crowded around this night, we switch back to English.
Say, I'm heading to Super Snacks.
One of the students says, Super Snacks is notorious amongst the students for being greasy, carbsy, and sugary beyond even what a broke college student can stand. They ask me,
Could we get you something?
I'll take a waffle. My pens slow down. My voice is dry. The students are adorable. It's past midnight. We've talked so long. Some have cycled out, heading to study or sleep. Some have cycled in, hearing tell from their friends that the crazy ambidextrous person from the Master's Tea posters was here for one last night at CAPT. And then it's time to call it a night. Just before, though, those 3 students come back from their pilgrimage to Super Snacks. I take a bite.
How's the waffle?
It's the best midnight waffle I've ever had. Because it's not about the flavor. It's not about the fat. It's about being surrounded by a dozen listening ears, standing on tired feet to keep on hearing stories of life from across the world. Students curious for what their future could hold in store, too. The next day, I am on a mission to draw as many of the remaining students as I can before I head for the airport. Until it's back at the airport. Until it's back on the LRT and MRT lines of Malaysia. But with each portrait I hand out, numbered 13,000 and something, I think about my time at the College of Alice and Peter Tan. I think of my time at the Master's Tea.